The NBA's biggest shockwave may already be in motion. Nobody saw this coming. But now, one question is shaking the entire NBA. What if the league's most explosive point guard is about to wear purple and gold? Just imagine it for a second. Ja Morant attacking the rim with his signature fearlessness. Luka Dončić orchestrating one of basketball's most dangerous offenses. The Los Angeles Lakers entering a brand new era with two superstars capable of changing a game in a matter of seconds. It sounds like something straight out of a video game, yet behind the scenes, the possibility has become impossible to ignore. For years, Ja Morant represented everything Memphis wanted to become. He wasn't just the franchise player. He was the identity. Every thunderous dunk, every impossible finish, every fearless drive gave Grizzlies fans hope that a championship window was finally opening. But in professional sports, windows don't stay open forever. Sometimes they slam shut without warning, and that's exactly where this story begins. The Grizzlies aren't simply facing another disappointing offseason. They're standing at a crossroads that could redefine the franchise for the next decade. After quietly reshaping much of their roster and accumulating future assets, the organization appears focused on building a different future. Whether that future still includes Ja Morant has become one of the biggest questions in basketball. At the same time, the Lakers are entering a transformation of their own. The spotlight is shifting. New priorities are emerging. Every move they make could determine whether they remain championship contenders or enter another period of uncertainty. When one franchise is searching for a fresh start and another is searching for its next superstar, the entire league starts paying attention. But talent has never been the real question with Ja Morant. Everyone already knows what he can do when he's healthy and fully locked in. His explosiveness is still breathtaking. His playmaking can dismantle elite defenses. On any given night, he can look like one of the most electrifying guards the NBA has ever seen. The real question is much harder. Can another organization truly believe the best version of Ja Morant is still waiting to return? Because this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about trust. It's about leadership. It's about whether one of the league's brightest stars can rewrite the story that has followed him over the past few seasons. If the answer is yes, the Lakers could become the perfect stage for one of the greatest redemption stories in recent NBA history. If the answer is no, this could become one of the most expensive gambles any franchise has ever made. Either way, the next few weeks could completely reshape the balance of power across the Western Conference. Before we dive deeper into everything that's happening behind the scenes, let me know where you're watching from. Are you a Lakers fan, a Grizzlies fan, or just an NBA fan following one of the biggest storylines of the offseason? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep NBA breakdowns, blockbuster trade rumors, and behind-the-scenes stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. The rise before the fall. Before the rumors. Before the trade whispers. Before Memphis started quietly preparing for life without him, Ja Morant was the miracle that changed everything. He arrived in 2019 as the second overall pick, but he didn't play like a young guard trying to find his place. He played like a storm Memphis had been waiting on for years. Every night, he gave fans something they could not look away from. The fearless drives, the mid-air adjustments, the passes that split defenses before anyone realized the lane was open. Morant didn't just score points. He created moments, and in the NBA, moments are what turn talented players into stars. For a franchise that had spent years searching for a new identity after the grit and grind era, Ja became the answer. He brought speed, he brought swagger, he brought belief. Memphis wasn't just another young team anymore. They were danger. They were loud. They were must-watch television. Then the awards came. Rookie of the Year, All-Star selections, national attention. Suddenly, people weren't just asking how good Ja Morant could become. They were asking if he could become one of the faces of the entire league. That is what makes this story so painful. Because this was not some ordinary player losing value. This was a franchise centerpiece, a human highlight reel. A player who made fans believe Memphis could finally chase something bigger than respect. He had the city behind him, the organization behind him, and the basketball world waiting to see how high he could fly. But sometimes the same spotlight that makes a star famous also exposes every crack in the foundation. And for Ja Morant, the pressure of being the face of a franchise started turning into something heavier. The expectations grew, the attention grew, the mistakes grew louder. At first, people defended him because the talent was undeniable. They said he was young. They said he would learn. They said every superstar goes through growing pains, but the NBA is not patient forever. And once the questions moved from how great can Ja become to can Memphis still trust him, everything changed. When trust started breaking, the first real damage did not happen on the court. It happened away from the game, where cameras, social media, and public reaction can turn one bad moment into a career-defining headline. Ja Morant's off-court incidents created a storm Memphis could not ignore. The league responded. The Grizzlies responded. Sponsors paid attention. Fans argued. Analysts debated. And suddenly, the conversation around Ja was no longer only about dunks, assists, and playoff potential. It became about judgment. That is a dangerous place for any franchise player to be, because teams can survive missed shots. They can survive bad games. They can even survive injuries if the belief is still strong. But when the front office begins to wonder whether its superstar can be trusted to lead the organization, the entire relationship changes. Morant apologized. He said the right things. He tried to move forward. But then another incident brought the questions back even louder. And when the same concern appears more than once, the league no longer sees it as a mistake. It starts to see it as a pattern. That is when Memphis had to look at the situation different. This was not just about public image. It was about the locker room. It was about leadership. It was about whether young players could follow someone whose own future had become uncertain. It was about whether the franchise could build a championship culture around a star whose availability and decision-making were now under a microscope. And then came the injury. The suspensions hurt, the headlines hurt, but the missed games made everything worse. Because every time Ja was unavailable, Memphis had to play without the engine of its offense. Every absence reminded the organization how fragile its entire plan had become. The cruelest part is that the talent never disappeared. When Ja was on the floor and locked in, you could still see it. The burst, the creativity, the star power. The problem was no longer whether he could play. The problem was whether a team could count on him when everything mattered most. And in the NBA, that question can destroy a player's trade value faster than any missed jumper ever could. The real problem is bigger than basketball. For Ja Morant, the issue has never been ability. Every front office in the league knows what he can do when healthy. He can collapse a defense in one step. He can turn a broken possession into a highlight. He can force opponents to change their entire game plan because one burst to the rim can shift momentum instantly. But NBA teams do not trade for highlights. They trade for certainty, and that is where the problem began. Morant's contract is massive. His recent availability has been shaky. His relationship with Memphis has become complicated. His public image has taken hits. And when all of those things come together, even elite talent becomes a difficult investment. That is why the phrase negative value feels so brutal. It does not mean Ja Morant forgot how to play basketball. It means teams are looking at the whole picture and asking Memphis for compensation just to take on the risk. That is a stunning fall for a player who was once viewed as nearly untouchable. Imagine being the executive who has to make that call. Ja could revive your offense. He could sell tickets. He could become the most exciting player your fan base has seen in years. But you also know that if the gamble fails, your franchise could be trapped with a huge salary and a star who cannot stay available. That is the fear. The modern NBA is not just about talent anymore. It is about contracts, timelines, leadership, health, and culture. A player can be spectacular and still be risky. A player can be famous and still be difficult to move. A player can be loved by fans and still make front offices hesitate. And that is exactly where Ja Morant stands now. He is not washed. He is not finished. He is not some ordinary name being pushed out of the league. He is still one of the most explosive guards alive. But the question is no longer, can Ja Morant change a game? The question is, can Ja Morant change his situation before the league stops believing? Memphis quietly chose a different future. The clearest sign that Memphis had changed its mind was not one quote, one report, or one bad night. It was the pattern. The Grizzlies began moving like a team no longer trying to protect the old core. They collected future assets. They shifted priorities. They looked toward the draft, and slowly, the franchise that once felt built around Ja Morant started looking like a franchise preparing to move on from him. That is the part fans often miss. Teams do not always announce a breakup loudly. Sometimes they simply stop planning around you. They stop treating you like the center of every decision. They start building a future that makes sense even if you are not there. For Morant, that had to be impossible to ignore. Memphis once looked like his city, his team, his era. But when the front office begins stockpiling picks and reshaping the roster, the message becomes clear. The organization is no longer asking how to maximize Ja Morant's prime. It is asking how to survive beyond him. That is a dramatic shift. And once a franchise reaches that point, the relationship becomes almost impossible to repair. Because even if both sides say the right things publicly, everyone around the league can read the room. The trust has changed. The timeline has changed. The emotional investment has changed. The Grizzlies are not rebuilding around nostalgia. They are rebuilding around flexibility. Draft picks do not create drama. Young assets do not demand control. Cap space does not miss games. A clean future is easier to sell than a complicated present. That does not mean Memphis hates Ja Morant. It means the organization may believe the partnership has reached its natural ending. And that is what makes the Lakers angle so powerful, because one team's ending can become another team's gamble. One franchise's exhaustion can become another franchise's opportunity. Memphis may see risk, but Los Angeles may see star power. Memphis may see a chapter closing, but the Lakers may see a headline big enough to shake the entire league. The trade market is colder than expected. The strange thing about the Ja Morant situation is that plenty of teams need what he provides, but very few seem willing to pay full price for it. That is the contradiction at the center of this entire story. Miami has been mentioned, but the Heat appear careful with their long-term money. Milwaukee makes sense if they want another star-level creator, but they have their own questions to answer. Minnesota is fascinating because a Morant and Anthony Edwards backcourt would be pure electricity. Sacramento and New Orleans could use a jolt, but only if the price is low enough. That is the problem for Memphis. The Grizzlies do not want to sell low on a player who once looked like a future MVP candidate, but the rest of the league is looking at the risk and saying, we are not paying superstar prices for a distressed asset. That gap is where trades die. Memphis wants respect for what Ja Morant has been. Other teams want discounts for which Mitch may become if the concerns continue. The Grizzlies see a former All-NBA talent. Rival executives see injuries, uncertainty, money, and public pressure. Both sides have a point. If Ja returns to form, the team that trades for him could look brilliant. If he stays inconsistent or unavailable, that same team could look reckless. That is why nobody wants to be the front office that overpays too early. So everyone waits. They wait on bigger stars. They wait on cap space. They wait on free agency. They wait to see if Memphis gets desperate, and the longer the waiting continues, the more uncomfortable the situation becomes for everyone involved. This is how NBA trade markets turn into chess matches. Nobody wants to blink first. Nobody wants to look desperate. Nobody wants to be the team that gives away too much or accepts too little. But at some point, the silence breaks. A contender misses its first target. A front office gets aggressive. A star becomes available. A deal that looked impossible suddenly has movement, and when that moment arrives, the Lakers will be watching. Why Los Angeles changes everything. The Lakers are different from every other team in this conversation because they do not just trade for players. They trade for story. That is what Los Angeles does. It turns basketball moves into global headlines. It turns risk into spectacle. It turns uncertainty into attention. And for Ja Morant, there may be no stage in the NBA bigger than purple and gold. The Lakers are entering a new era, and everyone can feel it. Luka Dončić is the centerpiece now. The franchise's future is no longer built around waiting for LeBron James to carry every burden. The next version of the Lakers must be designed around Luka's prime, Luka's skill set, and Luka's championship window. That creates a fascinating question. Who is the right star to place next to him? Luka controls tempo. Ja attacks chaos. Luka bends defenses with patience. Ja breaks them with speed. On paper, that combination could be terrifying. Defenders would have to choose between Luka manipulating the floor and Morant exploding downhill before the defense can even set. That kind of offensive pairing does not come around often. But the Lakers must also think about balance. Can two ball-dominant creators share the floor? Can Morant accept a role that requires discipline and trust? Can Luka and Ja become a true partnership instead of two separate highlights stitched together? Those are real questions. Then there is LeBron. His future affects everything. If he stays, the Lakers have to balance the final chapter of one legend with the beginning of Luka's era. If he leaves, Los Angeles suddenly has more freedom, more flexibility, and a stronger need for another star attraction. And Bronny adds another layer to the story. His future is tied closely to LeBron's decisions, and any shift there could open roster space, trade paths, or emotional complications. That is why Los Angeles makes this story feel bigger than basketball. Ja to the Lakers would not just be a transaction. It would be a collision of legacies, pressure, redemption, and risk. The gamble that could save or haunt the Lakers, a Ja Morant trade would be the kind of move that splits a fan base instantly. Some Lakers fans would see the upside and say, this is exactly what we need, a dynamic guard, a former superstar level talent, a player young enough to fit the next era and explosive enough to change the way teams defend Los Angeles. Others would see the risk and say, this is exactly the kind of gamble that can destroy flexibility. Both reactions would be fair, because if the Lakers get the best version of Ja Morant, the entire Western Conference has a problem. Luka Dončić drawing double teams, Ja attacking open space, defenses scrambling, transition opportunities everywhere. every possession carrying the threat of something spectacular. That version of the Lakers would be box office basketball. But if the concerns follow Morant to Los Angeles, the pressure becomes enormous. The LA spotlight is not gentle. Every missed game becomes a headline. Every rough stretch becomes a debate. Every off-court distraction becomes national news. Memphis pressure is one thing. Lakers pressure is something else entirely. That is why this move would not just test Morant's talent, it would test his maturity. Los Angeles can give a player a second act, but it can also expose him faster than anywhere else. The same city that turns stars into icons can turn uncertainty into daily drama. For the Lakers, the decision comes down to belief. Do they believe Ja Morant can grow? Do they believe a new environment can reset his career? Do they believe Luka can share the floor with another high-usage creator? Do they believe the reward is worth the risk? Championship teams often require bold moves, but bold does not always mean smart. Sometimes the bravest decision is taking the gamble. Sometimes the bravest decision is walking away, and that is what makes this story so gripping. There is no safe answer. There is only a franchise trying to decide whether a fallen star still has enough fire left to help light up the next Lakers era. The moment before the domino falls. Right now, the Ja Morant situation feels like a room full of people pretending not to stare at the same door. Memphis knows it may be time. Morant likely knows the relationship has changed. Rival teams know the price could drop. Lakers fans know Los Angeles is always one phone call away from entering the conversation. And that is how NBA blockbusters usually begin. Not with a loud announcement, not with a team admitting everything publicly, but with whispers, with careful calls, with executives measuring interest, with reporters hearing the same name from different places until the rumor stops sounding like noise and starts sounding like movement. The Grizzlies have to be careful. If they wait too long, the market could shrink. If they move too fast, they may accept less than Morant's talent deserves. Every day that passes creates more pressure, because Memphis is not just trying to trade a player. They are trying to close an era without admitting they mishandled the ending. That is one of the hardest things in professional sports. When a franchise once sold its entire future around one star, walking away from that star becomes more than a roster move. It becomes a public confession that the original plan no longer works. And for the front office, that matters. They cannot look desperate, they cannot send Morant away for pennies and tell the fan base that everything is fine. They need a return strong enough to justify the breakup, but the market may not be willing to give them that kind of package. That is where the tension lives. The Lakers have to be careful too. They cannot build their next era on emotion alone. Luka Dončić's prime is too valuable. Every major decision must serve the long-term championship plan. If Ja fits that plan, Los Angeles could have one of the most exciting offensive cores in basketball. If he does not, the Lakers cannot afford to chase a name just because the name is loud. That is the thin line between vision and panic. For Los Angeles, the temptation is obvious. Morant would bring speed, star power, and a level of rim pressure the Lakers do not currently have next to Luka. He would give them another player who can break a defense without needing a screen, another weapon who can make regular season games feel like national events, in a city built on entertainment that mattered. But the Lakers also know the cost of chasing headlines. A wrong move in Los Angeles does not stay quiet. It becomes a daily debate. It follows every losing streak, every injury report, every locker room rumor, every late game mistake. If Morant arrives and the fit is awkward, the pressure will not build slowly. It will explode immediately. For Morant, this may be the most important moment of his career. Not because of one playoff series, not because of one stat line, but because the next team that believes in him may also be the last team willing to bet big on him without proof that things have changed. That is heavy. But it is also an opportunity, because sports history is full of stars who needed a reset before they could become whole again. A new locker room, a new role, a new city, a new reason to lock in. Los Angeles could give him all of that. It could give him the lights, the challenge, the accountability, and the chance to rewrite the conversation in front of the biggest basketball audience in the world. But it would also give him no place to hide. Every possession would be watched, every decision would be judged, every sign of growth or regression would become part of the national story. Maybe that is exactly what Ja Morant needs. Maybe he needs a place where the expectations are so high that there is no room left for drifting. Maybe he needs a veteran locker room, a championship standard, and a superstar like Luka who forces everyone around him to think the game at a different level. Maybe the right structure could turn the risk into a revival. Or maybe Memphis already knows something the rest of the league is still trying to figure out. That is the mystery. Maybe Ja Morant to the Lakers is only a rumor. Maybe it becomes nothing. Maybe another team steps in with a cleaner offer, fewer complications, and more patience. But if the call comes, and if Los Angeles decides to take the swing, the NBA will not treat it like a normal trade. It will feel like the beginning of either a comeback story or a warning sign. And that is why everyone is watching. Not because the deal is guaranteed, not because the Lakers are desperate, not because Memphis has no options. Everyone is watching because Ja Morant remains one of the few players in the league who can still change everything. If the right version of him returns, one phone call could end the Memphis chapter. One front office could gamble on the comeback. One trade could turn a damaged relationship into the most talked about second chance in basketball. And until that domino falls, the entire NBA will keep listening for the quiet conversation that becomes tomorrow morning's breaking news. The lesson behind the rumor at the center of this entire story is a simple truth. Talent can open every door, but character, discipline, and consistency decide how long those doors stay open. Ja Morant's basketball gifts are not in question. He is one of the rare athletes who can make an arena hold its breath. He can create plays that look impossible. He can change a franchise's energy in one quarter. That kind of talent is special, and it should never be dismissed. But the NBA is not only a talent league, it is a trust league. Teammates need to trust that their leader will be available. Coaches need to trust that their star will buy into the system. Front offices need to trust that their investment will not become a constant source of uncertainty. Fans need to trust that the player they believe in is also committed to becoming the best version of himself. That is the challenge in front of Morant now. If he gets a second act, whether in Los Angeles or somewhere else, it can not only be about proving he can still jump higher, move faster, or score more. Everyone already knows he can play. The real proof will come in how he leads, how he responds to pressure, how he handles criticism, and how seriously he treats the responsibility that comes with being a franchise star. For Memphis, the lesson is different. Sometimes a team must be honest enough to admit that a chapter has ended. That does not mean the past was a failure. Ja gave Memphis unforgettable moments. He brought the city excitement, relevance, and belief. But not every partnership lasts forever, and sometimes moving forward is the healthiest choice for both sides. For the Lakers, the lesson is about patience and wisdom. Big names are tempting, star power sells, but championship teams are built on fit, sacrifice, and stability. If they pursue Morant, it must be because they believe he can help Luka Dončić win at the highest level, not just because the headline would dominate the sports world. And for Morant, the message is human. A setback does not have to be the end of a story. Mistakes do not have to define a person forever, but growth has to be real. Redemption is not something a team gives you. It is something you earn every day through choices, humility, and commitment. Maybe Ja Morant lands in Los Angeles. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Maybe Memphis finds a deal no one expects. But wherever he plays next, the question will follow it. Is this the beginning of his comeback or the final warning before the league moves on? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, share it with another NBA fan, and subscribe to the channel for more deep stories, trade drama, and behind-the-scenes basketball analysis. And before you go, comment below. Type 1 if you believe Ja Morant can become a superstar again, or type 2 if you think the risk is too big for the Lakers.